For heaven's sake, I am a medical professional. Excuse me, ma'am, your profession is irrelevant. This is a secured incident zone. Please withdraw. Emergency medical services have not yet arrived. You are obligated to permit medical assistance. Consider this your final admonition. Retreat now or face detainment. In that case, contact your superior, because if he succumbs, the responsibility will be yours. The body cameras were recording, and bystanders had their mobile devices out. In precisely 8 minutes, Officer Cole Turner would make a decision that would derail his career, cost the city hundreds of thousands of dollars, and unveil a startling truth. He was unaware of his own department's established protocols. At 7:03 p.m. on a Saturday evening in April, a man lay gravely injured on a city thoroughfare. A physician, standing just 10 feet away, possessed the skills to save his life, and a uniformed officer, representing the law, stood between them, preventing her aid. What transpired in the ensuing 8 minutes would conclude a professional path, expose an agency ignorant of its own regulations, and demonstrate that the most perilous aspect of authority isn't its application, but rather when its holder lacks comprehension of their actual scope of authority. Before we proceed further, could you do me a small favor? Kindly leave a comment indicating your viewing location. And if you haven't already, please take a moment to click the subscribe button. The subsequent actions of this physician and the findings of investigators upon reviewing the department's internal policies will astonish you. Dr. Nia Brooks was no ordinary 34-year-old. While many her age were still navigating the initial phases of their careers, Nia had already attained recognition as one of the city's most esteemed emergency physicians. However, her contributions extended beyond routine emergency care. She specialized in salvaging lives that other medical practitioners had deemed unsalvageable. Nia earned her medical doctorate from Johns Hopkins and completed her emergency medicine residency at Massachusetts General Hospital, a program ranked among the top 3 in the nation. Prior to accepting a position at County General Hospital, she gained invaluable experience in the busiest trauma centers in Baltimore and Boston. In her 9 years of dedicated practice, she had attended to over 10,000 emergency patients. Her colleagues affectionately referred to her as the miracle worker, due to her extraordinary aptitude for preserving life against overwhelming odds. Nia's expertise lay in emergency trauma medicine. To clarify, this means that when an individual arrives at the emergency room in critical condition due to violence, accidents, or sudden catastrophic events, Nia was the one who fought tenaciously to keep them breathing. She could instantaneously interpret vital signs, identify life-threatening conditions within seconds, and possessed precise knowledge of the necessary interventions and their urgent timing. On that specific Saturday in April, Nia was en route home following a 12-hour shift at County General. The emergency room had been in a state of constant turmoil throughout the day, dealing with 2 shootings, a vehicular collision, a cardiac arrest, and numerous other urgent cases. She was utterly depleted, fueled only by coffee and residual adrenaline. She was attired in navy blue scrubs, layered with a dark overcoat, her hospital identification badge, displaying her photograph, credentials, and the designation __1__ in bold lettering was affixed directly to her scrub top. Her stethoscope was draped around her neck. She carried no medical bag or personal belongings, only her mobile phone in her coat pocket and her car keys in her hand. The afternoon was characterized by overcast skies and a cool, variable April temperature. The sun was visible but obscured by dense gray clouds, creating an atmosphere of fading light that had not yet reached true dusk. The streets were bustling with weekend activity, with people returning home, heading out, and walking their pets. Nia resided in a working-class neighborhood, approximately 15 minutes from the hospital, consisting of terraced houses and local corner shops, the kind of community where residents were familiar with one another. She was just 2 blocks from her apartment when the flashing lights caught her attention. Red and blue lights pulsed against the brick facades of the row houses, a police cruiser positioned in the center of the street, and yellow crime scene tape being erected across the road. Nia instinctively decelerated. 9 years in emergency medicine had instilled in her a perpetual habit of observing, assessing, and anticipating the potential need for assistance. It was at this moment that she noticed him, a man lying motionless on the street, his body contorted on his side, dark stains spreading across the pavement beneath his head. Nia's training immediately took over. Male, 30-something, unconscious, head trauma, significant blood loss, no discernible movement. She pulled her vehicle over, parked, and proceeded towards the scene. The officer stationed near the tape observed her approach and raised his hand. This was Officer Cole Turner, a Caucasian male in his late 20s with 4 years on the force. Of average height and a stocky build, he was the sort of officer who adhered strictly to his interpretation of procedures, without ever truly consulting the policy manual. Cole had encountered numerous crime scenes and believed he understood the established protocol: secure the area, preserve evidence, await detectives and paramedics, and prevent civilian interference. What Cole failed to realize was that his understanding was fundamentally flawed. The department's actual written policy, contained within a binder he had never opened since graduating from the academy, explicitly stipulated that medical emergencies take precedence over evidence preservation, that licensed medical professionals should be permitted to render emergency care when EMS is delayed, and that the preservation of life supersedes the securing of crime scenes. However, Cole had never perused this policy. His training officer had not stressed its importance, and his sergeant had never mentioned it. His operational approach was based on informal directives and often misconstrued advice from fellow officers. Quote, Cole instructed. Naya halted at the tape barrier. Cole glanced at her, then at the casualty, and back again. Naya peered past him at the man on the ground. She could discern the movement of his chest. Quote, 5, quote, 6, she inquired. Quote, 7, Nia meticulously examined the victim. The posture, the blood, the respiratory pattern, something was severely amiss. Quote, 8, quote, 9, quote, 10, quote, 11, quote, 12, Cole consulted his watch. Quote, 13. Naya performed a swift calculation. The average EMS response time for non-critical incidents was between 12 and 15 minutes. This incident had likely been reported as an assault, not a medical emergency, meaning a specialized trauma unit might not even be dispatched. She refocused her attention on the victim. His breathing had altered, becoming even more shallow, rapid, and irregular. These were highly alarming indicators. Quote, 14, Nia stated, her tone calm yet resolute. Quote, 15, quote, 16, Cole's jaw tightened. Ma'am, I will not repeat myself. Step away from the tape. Naya pointed to the hospital identification badge secured to her scrub top, her credentials clearly visible. Dr. Naya Brooks, Emergency Medicine, County General Hospital. I am standing here in my hospital attire. I am fully qualified to provide emergency care. That individual requires immediate medical attention. Cole briefly acknowledged the badge, but did not truly examine it. Ma'am, I could not care less if you were the Surgeon General. This is a secured crime scene, and you must depart. A quick question for our viewers. Have you ever witnessed someone in a position of authority who seemed to lack a proper understanding of the rules they were supposed to uphold? Please type yes or no in the comments section. Nia felt her frustration intensifying, but maintained a composed demeanor. Officer, I understand your commitment to preserving the scene, but if that man has sustained a severe head injury, every passing minute without treatment is critical. I can conduct a preliminary assessment without compromising any evidence. Cole shook his head. No civilians are permitted past this line. It is departmental policy. I am not a civilian. I am a licensed physician. You are not EMS. You are not the fire department. Therefore, you are a civilian. Inaya gestured towards her scrubs and the prominently displayed hospital badge. I am literally in my professional uniform. My credentials are right here. County General Emergency Medicine. Cole offered a cursory glance at the badge. That is inconsequential. You are not authorized personnel for this site. Naya again observed the man on the ground. His breathing was visibly deteriorating, even from her vantage point. The rise and fall of his chest were too rapid, too shallow, a pattern indicative of organ failure. For goodness sake, I am a doctor. Allow me to assist him. Cole's voice hardened. Quote 29, Nia adopted a different tactic. Quote 30 quote 31 quote 32 quote 33 quote 34 quote 35 quote 36 Nia stated, her voice now sharp. Cole produced his handcuffs and displayed them. Quote 37 Nia met his gaze, her eyes falling on the handcuffs, then the victim on the ground. And finally, Cole's resolute expression. He was serious. He would actually arrest her for attempting to save a life. Then summon your supervisor, Nia replied quietly, because if he dies, that consequence rests with you. Cole pointed towards the sidewalk behind her. Ma'am, step behind the tape now. Nia did not move instantaneously. She was weighing the man's urgent need for aid against the officer's refusal of access. She could press the issue, risk arrest, and the victim would still remain unattended. Alternatively, she could comply with orders and hope for a timely arrival of paramedics. Neither option felt acceptable. She stepped back from the tape but did not depart. She retrieved her mobile phone and dialed 911. Cole observed her. "What are you doing?" "I am calling to ascertain the status of EMMS," Nia replied. "This is a medical emergency, and they need to expedite their response." The 911 operator answered. Nia identified herself as a physician on the scene and requested an immediate upgrade of the EMS response to a trauma level for a victim with head trauma exhibiting signs of respiratory distress. The operator confirmed that an ambulance was en route with an estimated arrival time of 3 to 4 minutes. Nia concluded the call and remained in her position, monitoring the victim from behind the police tape. Residents from the adjacent row houses began to emerge, drawn by the commotion and the flashing police lights. The street was gradually filling with people, a gathering crowd of neighbors and passers-by. Several individuals were already recording the scene with their mobile phones. A woman's voice called out from the expanding throng, quote 44 Cole disregarded the plea. Another voice chimed in, quote 45 a man's voice added, "Look at her badge. She works at County General." The crowd's murmurs intensified, with more people converging and more phones being raised. Cole activated his radio and requested additional units, citing a burgeoning hostile crowd. The man on the ground emitted a sound, a wet gurgling noise. Nia immediately recognized it as aspiration, blood or fluid entering the airway, the sound of someone drowning. She activated the recording function on her mobile phone, directing the camera towards the victim, Cole, and the surrounding scene. If the man were to perish, there would be a record. Quote 47 Nia declared, her voice amplified and clear for the recording, quote 48 Cole turned to face her. Quote 49 quote 50 quote 51 quote 52 Cole remained silent. The wet gurgling intensified, and the man's body began to convulse. "He's having a seizure!" Nia exclaimed. "He is going to die! Let me help him!" Cole looked at the victim, a flicker of panic crossing his features. Nia moved towards the tape line. Cole grasped her arm. "Stop!" Nia pulled away. "Do not touch me! A man is dying!" Cole produced his handcuffs. "Turn around! Hands behind your back!" The crowd erupted in a cacophony of shouts and exclamations. "You're arresting a doctor?" someone yelled. "Let her save him! What is wrong with you?" Cole hesitated, his gaze shifting between Nia, the victim who was now in clear medical distress, and the numerous recording devices. In the distance, sirens wailed. The ambulance was finally arriving. Cole made his decision. He seized Nia's wrist and pulled her away from the victim. Quote, _60, he cuffed her. The crowd responded with boos and jeers. Nia did not resist, allowing him to handcuff her. She stood there, hands behind her back, observing the man on the ground struggling for breath. 30 seconds later, the ambulance arrived. The paramedics disembarked and immediately rushed to the victim, one assessing vital signs while the other prepared oxygen. Within moments, they had stabilized him and were preparing him for transport. The lead paramedic, a man named James Rodriguez, whom Nia recognized from their shared hospital environment, looked up and saw her standing in her scrubs, her hands still cuffed behind her back. Quote, _61, quote, _62, Nia, stated calmly. Quote, _63. James glared at Cole with palpable disdain. He then returned to his patient and oversaw his loading into the ambulance. Before departing, James approached Cole, quote, _64, Cole offered no response. The ambulance departed, its sirens fading into the distance. Do you believe the officer comprehended the magnitude of his error? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Cole uncuffed Nia. Quote, _65, he said quietly. Quote, _66, Nia stated, rubbing her wrist. Cole provided the information. Quote, _67, quote, _68, Nia replied. Quote, _69, She then returned to her vehicle and drove home. The April evening was deepening into darkness, the overcast skies causing an earlier twilight than usual. Most individuals who have an encounter with law enforcement might confide in friends, post about it on social media, or even contemplate filing a complaint, ultimately deeming it too much trouble. However, Nia was not most people. She was a physician with institutional support, legal resources, and video evidence of an officer contravening both state law and departmental policy. The following morning, Nia proceeded to the hospital and consulted with the legal department. She presented her account, showed them the video she had recorded, and detailed the medical emergency she had witnessed. The hospital's legal team promptly procured the police department's own policy. Their findings were astonishing. The police department possessed a written policy, Policy 4.17, titled quote, _70, which unequivocally stated that medical care takes precedence over evidence preservation. The policy specifically mandated that licensed medical professionals be permitted to provide emergency intervention when EMS is delayed. Cole had violated his own department's written policy. The legal team also identified State Statute 23-412, which classified the willful obstruction of emergency medical care as a misdemeanor offense. Cole had not merely made a poor judgment call, he had broken the law, a law he should have been aware of, as it was stipulated in his department's policy manual. The hospital lodged a formal complaint with the police department, the city attorney's office, and the state medical board. Their submission included the video evidence, medical documentation of the victim's condition, and copies of the department's own policies that Cole had violated. They also successfully located the victim. His name was Terrell Jackson, a 32-year-old man who had been assaulted outside an apartment building, sustaining a skull fracture and a severe concussion. The paramedics' report indicated that upon their arrival, the victim was experiencing respiratory distress and aspirating blood. Without prompt intervention, his prognosis would likely have been fatal. Terrell remained in the ICU for 3 days, but ultimately survived. His family was apprised of the physician who attempted to provide assistance and the officer who obstructed her efforts. The police department received the complaint on Monday. By Tuesday morning, Cole was placed on administrative leave. Internal Affairs assigned the case to Lieutenant Patricia Reeves, the very supervisor Naya had instructed Cole to contact. Patricia, a 16-year veteran of the department, had investigated hundreds of complaints. However, upon reviewing the body camera footage, she recognized the gravity of the situation. She summoned Cole for an interview on Wednesday. Quote, 71, Patricia inquired. Quote, 72, Cole responded. Quote, 73, quote, 74, Patricia produced a binder. Quote, 75, quote, 76, Cole stated, followed by a period of silence. Patricia opened the binder to a marked page. Policy 4.17, quote, 77, She read aloud the section pertaining to allowing licensed medical professionals to render emergency care. Quote, 78, quote, 79, Cole admitted. Quote, 80, Cole offered no response. Patricia continued, quote, 81, quote, 82, quote, 83, Cole's face had turned pale. I believed I was acting correctly. You were mistaken, and you failed to verify whether your assumptions aligned with actual policy. The interview lasted 68 minutes. By its conclusion, Patricia had documented not only Cole's actions that night, but also as a recurring pattern of officers operating on assumptions, rather than a thorough understanding of actual policy. The investigation uncovered a disturbing revelation. When Patricia randomly quizzed other officers on departmental policies, over 60% could not accurately cite the medical emergency protocol, with many unaware of its existence. The department had established the appropriate policies, drafted years prior with input from medical and legal experts, but they had not been consistently enforced or adequately trained upon. Officers graduated from the academy and seemingly never revisited the policy manual. Cole had indeed violated written policy, but the department had failed in its duty to ensure officers were cognizant of these existing policies. The investigation spanned 3 weeks, culminating in a comprehensive report detailing its findings. Cole had violated Policy 4.17 and State Statute 23-412. He had demonstrated a fundamental lack of knowledge regarding the rules governing his professional conduct. His ignorance of basic policy had endangered a citizen's life. The department recommended termination. However, the report extended its findings to document a systemic failure in training officers on existing policies, noting that Cole was not the sole officer unaware of the medical emergency protocol. It recommended mandatory annual training on all critical policies, supplemented by assessments to confirm knowledge retention. Cole was terminated 3 weeks after the incident. He opted not to appeal, with his union representative advising him that the case was indefensible. The body camera footage provided irrefutable evidence. The department's own policies unequivocally condemned his actions. But there was more to the story. The district attorney's office reviewed the circumstances and made the decision to bring charges against Cole for impeding emergency medical assistance. Cole entered a guilty plea to a minor offense. His sentence included 100 hours of unpaid community work and a monetary penalty of $1,500. He also committed to permanently relinquishing any future employment within law enforcement. Terrell Jackson, the individual who was assaulted, survived the ordeal. His family subsequently initiated legal proceedings against the municipality, citing the delay in receiving medical attention. The city opted to reach a settlement for $285,000, opting to avoid a protracted court battle. As a condition of the settlement, the city pledged to implement the recommendations that emerged from the internal affairs investigation. All personnel would undergo annual training focused on crucial directives, including protocols for medical emergencies encountered at active incident scenes. New recruits would be assessed on these directives prior to being authorized to work without direct supervision. Supervisory staff would conduct periodic reviews of these protocols during daily briefing sessions. The established regulations themselves did not undergo revision. They were already considered robust. The department simply needed to adhere to them consistently. If you believe more law enforcement agencies should enforce the policies they currently possess, kindly share the word facts in the comments section below. Nia continued her dedicated work at County General Hospital. The event became a segment of her professional narrative, yet it did not define her character or her career trajectory. She persevered in her mission to save lives, impart knowledge to medical residents, and continue to be the indispensable force in the emergency room. 6 weeks following the lawsuit's filing, the video recording Noah had made went viral. It garnered an audience exceeding 3 million views. Medical associations utilize it as an illustration of the obligation to provide care. Legal scholars examined it as a case study concerning governmental accountability. While some commended Nia for her assertive stance, others chastised her for confronting the officer. A segment of opinion suggested she should have yielded when faced with the threat of apprehension. Conversely, others maintained she acted precisely as her medical pledge mandated. However, one undeniable truth resonated with everyone. She was unequivocally correct. The officer was demonstrably wrong. Had she not intervened, Terrell Jackson would very likely have succumbed. Let us broaden our perspective to encompass the larger implications. This account transcends the actions of a single physician and a lone officer. It illuminates a pervasive systemic issue prevalent within police departments across the nation. These are effective policies confined to binders, unread and unheeded. Officers operate based on informal understandings passed down through their ranks, rather than adhering to explicit written mandates. Training is often confined to the initial academy phase, with no subsequent reinforcement. Cole was not an outlier, a rogue officer harboring malicious intent. He genuinely believed he was executing his duties appropriately. His interpretation of crime scene security involved absolute exclusion of all unauthorized individuals. He was unaware that his department had a directive explicitly stating the contrary. This situation represents not merely an individual failing, but a fundamental breakdown of the system. Consider this. How many other officers are currently operating under flawed assumptions? How many vital policies, capable of preserving life or safeguarding rights, remain unknown to the very officers who should be enforcing them? How many individuals have endured suffering due to departments creating commendable policies but failing to implement them effectively? The body camera footage from this incident is now integrated into police academy training curricula in 7 states. Under the designation quote, _87, civil liberties organizations employ it to educate communities about their legal entitlements during medical crises. Medical institutions utilize it to instruct students on the legal protections afforded to those providing emergency medical assistance. A single encounter on an April afternoon blossomed into a nationwide discourse on police training protocols, policy enforcement, and the chasm between established regulations and real-world application. Here is a question for you. On how many occasions have you witnessed an authority figure demonstrably ignorant of the very rules they are mandated to uphold? Please share your observations in the comments section. There exists another critical takeaway from this event: the significance of documentation. Nia meticulously recorded the encounter on her personal device. The officer's body camera captured the entire sequence of events. Bystanders also recorded the incident from various vantage points, all corroborating the same narrative. Without these recordings, the outcome would have been vastly different. Cole could have easily fabricated a narrative, portraying Nia as aggressive or uncooperative, thereby justifying his actions. It would have devolved into a he said, she said scenario. However, the indisputable evidence provided by the cameras refuted his potential claims. They clearly depicted Cole's refusal to permit medical intervention. They illustrated Nia's composed explanations of the urgent medical situation. They captured the victim's distress while Nia was in handcuffs. In essence, they documented every pertinent detail. This underscores the paramount importance of recording, the value of body cameras, and the impact of citizen-generated video evidence. They establish a level of accountability that would otherwise be absent. Following the resolution of the lawsuit, several analogous incidents surfaced. individuals who had attempted to provide aid at emergency scenes, only to be rebuffed by officers, nurses, paramedics, and even off-duty firefighters who were prevented from assisting in situations where their intervention could have been beneficial. None of these prior instances resulted in any repercussions because there was no video evidence, no documentation, and consequently, no irrefutable proof. Complaints were lodged, but they yielded no tangible results. Naya's situation diverged due to the presence of concrete evidence. The hospital supported her position. The media provided extensive coverage. The video achieved widespread dissemination. This confluence of factors compelled accountability. However, it raises a disquieting question. How many individuals attempted to render assistance, were turned away, and lacked any means to substantiate their experience? How many lives were tragically lost because officers were unaware of their own governing policies, and no mechanism existed to hold them accountable? Let us address a recurring point that emerged as this narrative gained traction. Certain individuals asserted that Naya should have deferred to the officer's authority when threatened with arrest, emphasizing the inherent dangers of confronting law enforcement and suggesting she was fortunate the situation did not escalate. Herein lies the crucial distinction. Naya did initially comply. She moved behind the designated barrier. She contacted emergency services to expedite the ambulance response. She exerted all permissible efforts within the parameters set by the officer. However, when the victim's condition rapidly deteriorated, when she heard him struggling to breathe, when mere seconds held the potential to determine life or death, she made a deliberate choice. She proceeded to offer aid. Was it a course of action fraught with peril? Undeniably. Was there a possibility of harm to herself? Absolutely. Yet she embraced that risk because her professional oath necessitated it. She did so because a man was in critical condition, and she possessed the requisite skills to intervene. Not everyone would opt for such a path. Not everyone possesses the fortitude to do so, and that is an understandable sentiment. However, to criticize her for attempting to save a life fundamentally misses the core issue. The problem was not that Nia asserted herself. The problem was that she was compelled to do so. The problem was an officer who operated with a deficit of knowledge regarding departmental protocols. The problem was a system that possessed sound regulations, but consistently failed to enforce them. Therefore, what are the salient lessons derived from this entire episode? Firstly, it is imperative to be cognizant of the policies that govern individuals holding positions of authority over you. While Cole lacked awareness of his department's mandates, Naya possessed knowledge of the law. She understood her rights. She was aware of the correct procedures. This understanding empowered her to advocate for the necessary action. Secondly, meticulous documentation is essential. Record events whenever feasible. Ascertain names and badge numbers. Compile corroborating evidence. Nia's video recording proved instrumental in holding Cole accountable. Thirdly, perseverance is key. Naya did not merely vent her frustrations to acquaintances. She formally lodged complaints with multiple oversight bodies. She leveraged her institutional resources. She pursued the matter to its logical conclusion. Fourthly, recognize that well-articulated policies are rendered meaningless in the absence of enforcement. The police department had exemplary policies in place. They had simply neglected to train their officers on them. Enforcement carries the same weight as the rules themselves. Fifthly, the pursuit of ethical conduct occasionally necessitates embracing risk. Nia risked arrest in her endeavor to save a life. This is not a feat achievable by all, but it is an act worthy of profound respect when undertaken. As of the present, Cole Turner is no longer employed in law enforcement. He transitioned to a role in private security, subsequently departing that sector as well. He has refrained from public commentary regarding the incident. Terrell Jackson successfully recovered from his injuries. He experiences some residual cognitive impairment stemming from the head trauma, but he is alive. He attributes his survival to Naya's persistent advocacy for expedited emergency medical services. Naya continues her tenure at County General Hospital. She has been promoted to the position of Assistant Director of Emergency Medicine. Her role now encompasses training residents not only in medical expertise, but also in the principles of advocacy, patient empowerment, navigating bureaucratic systems, and the ethical imperative to act correctly. Even when confronted with opposition from authority figures, The police department has instituted mandatory annual policy training for all its officers. Each officer must successfully pass an examination on critical policies, including those pertaining to medical emergencies at crime scenes, prior to their annual performance evaluation. Supervisors are now required to conduct monthly policy briefings. Complaint rates concerning officers interfering with medical care saw a remarkable decrease of 73% in the 2 years following the implementation of the revised training regimen. The policies themselves remained unchanged. It was the training, the enforcement, and the accountability that experienced transformation. A single physician, a single officer, 8 minutes, and a department was finally compelled to adhere to regulations it had established years prior but had neglected to implement. This is the consequence when an individual possesses knowledge of the law and steadfastly refuses to countenance ignorance as an acceptable defense. This is the outcome when documentation facilitates accountability. This is what transpires when systemic failures are rectified, bridging the divide between policy and practice. A final question for your consideration. What is one significant insight you have gained from this narrative that was previously unknown to you? Please share your response in the comments section, and kindly remember to subscribe for access to more compelling stories of this nature. This narrative holds importance because it extends beyond the individual experiences of Nia and Cole. It speaks to every instance where an authority figure operates on assumptions rather than established protocols. It pertains to every commendable policy that languishes unread and unenforced. It concerns every life that was tragically lost because an individual was unaware of the rules that could have ensured their safety. Nia's story demonstrates that one can effectively challenge ignorance masquerading as authority. One can possess a superior understanding of regulations compared to those tasked with their enforcement. One can meticulously document transgressions and demand accountability. And at times, one can compel systems to genuinely uphold the sound policies they already possess. Not every situation culminates in accountability. Not every infraction results in punitive measures. However, this particular instance did, and that holds considerable weight. The visual record from that April afternoon remains accessible. It allows viewers to witness a doctor calmly articulating a medical emergency while an officer threatens her with legal repercussions. It allows observation of the precise moment the victim begins to experience respiratory distress. It provides insight into the consequences when a lack of policy comprehension intersects with urgent medical necessity. And perhaps, just perhaps, the next time an officer encounters a similar scenario, this account will serve as a reminder. They will recall that their department likely has established protocols for medical emergencies. They will remember that the preservation of life takes precedence. They will recognize that effective policies are only functional when diligently observed. This constitutes Nia's enduring legacy, not in the creation of new policies, but in her successful endeavor to compel a department to finally implement the existing ones. Not in establishing novel regulations, but in holding individuals accountable for disregarding current ones. Not in instigating a systemic revolution, but in ensuring the system functioned as it was always intended to. This is the chronicle of how a physician effectively challenged an officer's ignorance of departmental protocols and achieved a favorable outcome. More profoundly, it is a narrative about the disparity between written directives and practical application, and the arduous process required to bridge that gap. Thank you for engaging with this story in its entirety. If you found this account enlightening, please ensure you are subscribed, as I frequently explore similar narratives that warrant wider dissemination. Please leave a comment detailing your thoughts on what should transpire when officers fail to comprehend their own departmental policies. I look forward to connecting with you in the next installment.